Hey guys, DIY Maniac here. In today's DIY, I'm going to be going over winterizing my garden tractor. In my case, it's my John Deere D105, but these steps are pretty much applicable to all your standard garden tractors. So the first thing I want to talk about is the fuel, the gas in the mower itself. I always make sure there is no more fuel in the machine when putting it away for the winter. So what I like to do is empty out the tank. That could either be done by running it dry or siphoning the fuel out and then allowing the machine to run and die on its own. This ensures all the fuel that was left in the lines and around the carburetor have been burned off and no more fuel is there. I also like to remove the bowl on the carburetor. The bowl on the carburetor is like a little reservoir that does hold fuel, and I like to get it out of there. And later in this video, I'm going to be going over the steps on how to do it. When it comes to fuel, I only use ethanol-free fuels in my mower. So ethanol is not great for rubber components, especially on smaller engines. At my local Shell, the higher octane, octane 91, is ethanol-free. If you can't find ethanol-free fuels, you could find additives that could be added to help neutralize the ethanol. As well, I like to add stable to my fuel. Probably not needed as I go through my fuel quite regularly, but it adds a little bit of assurance to prolong the life of the fuel. So in my case, the fuel now is emptied, and we're going to talk about the next step, oil change. On this particular machine, the intervals are stated here, and oil change is listed at only 50 hours. So every 50 hours, do an oil change. I only put about 30 hours of mowing a year on my machine. I do an oil change at the end of every season. Even if I was only doing 10 hours of mowing, I would do an oil change at the end of every season. It's $15. It gives you that peace of mind. I suggest doing it that way. Oil picks up humidity over time. As it sits in the crankcase and oil pan over the winter, could cause some erosion on the crankshaft and other components. Let's change it out. I'm not going to go over the steps of doing an oil change because there's many videos out there on these kind of machines, but just a quick debriefing is, on this particular machine, on the right-hand side, passenger side, well, you don't really have a passenger side, but at the right-hand side, you have the oil exit, the spout here, it's twist lock, quick release, oil drains. On the left-hand side of the machine, you have the oil filter. In my case, I'm using the John Deere oil filter. The part number is AM125424C. I used a John Deere filter. It cost me $10 in my local John Deere dealership. Equivalent aftermarket ones out there like Fram and Wix, yeah, they're about a bit more actually. So I just go with the original. I go to my local John Deere dealer, purchase about 5 of them. I'm good for a long time. Another big question that comes up for debate is what kind of oil to use in your mower. In my opinion, you could use automotive oil, your synthetics, your non-synthetic oils. What I use in mine, if you want to use me as a reference, I use just your standard SAE 30. Mower oil. I've been using that for many years. I buy the John Deere one, but you have many different ones you could buy. And that seems to work well for me, for my climate. You're going to want to check, however, your usage. So if you're going to be using this machine in the winter to plow snow, to snow blow, you're going to have to use a different kind of oil that will protect at lower temperatures. And obviously, if you live in a very warm climate where you're going to be a lot warmer, here in Quebec, Canada, it doesn't get extremely warm. But if you're going to be in a place where you're going to have severe heat, you're going to want to use oils that are going to help protect at those higher heats. So it's depending on your region is going to really dictate what kind of oil you're going to use. But that's just my little input on the oil I use and why I use it. So as stated, I like to make sure there's no fuel left inside the carburetor bowl. So here on your machine is you have your carburetor. And normally what I would do on other machines is I would remove the 2 carburetor bowl retaining screws. You have 2 on them, and drop the bowl completely, being careful to work my way around the carburetor float and then drain out the bowl. On this particular machine, they have a switch down here. This is a safety switch. So this is your fuel cutoff. So if you try to get off the machine with the blades turning, or when it's in gear and the machine shuts itself off, that's what's happening. It's killing the fuel. A little plunger pops up and kills the fuel to the engine, starving it and causing it to die. So by removing this, you're able to drain the fuel without having to remove the carburetor bowl completely, which is nice. So what you want to do is get your adjustable wrench, get it on that switch and loosen it. Put yourself some shop towels, because as you unturn it, it's definitely going to leak out. We'll remove the connector off the bottom. So make sure you remove that connector so you don't twist the wires. And you're going to turn this, and you're going to see some fuel is going to come out. So that's why you want to have the shop towel there. So we remove this out, and there's not much fuel in there. Got most of it burnt out. At least there's a little bit. It's leaking out. So I just like to get that out there. So you see that's how that safety switch works, just a little plunger. And then you're going to put this back in, screw it in, tighten it, and reattach your wire connector. So now that our fuel tank is drained, our carburetor is empty of fuel, the next step in the fuel system that we need to take care of is the fuel filter, which is right here. It's just a standard inline filter. On this machine, it says to change every 50 hours. I change it every season. It's just a standard inline filter. I'll give you some advice here. If you go to John Deere, I think it's like $15, $20, some ridiculous amount. Even at your Home Depot, when you go to Home Depot, they have like a John Deere section. It's $15. Go to any of your hardware stores, garden centers. Go to the power equipment section where the mowers and the trimmers are. But don't go to the John Deere stand. Go where all the other accessories are. And they have the exact same equivalent filter. It's equivalent part number. Even on the back of the packaging of this filter, it references the John Deere part number. It's like $5 or $7. You could also buy this. I think Rock Auto has it for $5. Fram has an equivalent as well. So you don't need to buy the John Deere. There's nothing special about it. It's not even branded John Deere. So to remove this, it's just 2 spring clips. So you have one on the top, one on the bottom. You're going to take your pliers or weapon of choice, and you're going to compress the spring clip and move it out of the way. And on the bottom one, the same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this bottom one, and then I'm going to show you what it looks like. Okay guys, so we have the filter off and we have our new filter. One thing to keep in mind is look at the, it's hard to see on the camera. There's an arrow, basically a direction of flow printed on the filter. You want to make sure that the arrow is going the right direction. So here the arrow is going from down to up. So it's basically saying the flow goes that way. So in this particular mower, here's the line coming from the fuel tank. There's the line going to the carburetor. So you want the arrow pointing upwards, but you want to check on your mower to make sure it's the same. So to reinstall the filter, it's pretty much just put the hoses back on, re-put your clamps back down, and you're set to go. So we got the fuel system taken care of. Now we're going to look on the air side of the motor. So our air filter. Now in this particular case as well, it says change every 50 hours. This one I do not do every season. It's not needed, but you guys need to evaluate the filter. So you need to remove the filter, inspect it. If you live in very dusty conditions or a lot of tall grass, a lot of pollen, yeah, you might need to change it more often. So what I like to do is inspect it. So on this particular mower, there's 2 locking clips for the air filter cover, and the cover lifts right off. And then we have our filter. The filter is just held on with pressure, so you could just wiggle it and it comes off. And what you could do is, like on a car air filter, you could hold it up to a light and see if you're getting a lot of light coming through. Do any inspection for damage or a lot of large debris. If you don't have any of that, you could just shake it off, blow it out with low pressure from your air compressor, and put her back on. There's no need to change this every year, in my opinion, unless the conditions you're mowing in warrant it. So the next thing we want to look at is the spark plug. So spark plug we want to inspect and or replace on this machine once again every 50 hours. Through my experience and the amount of mowing I do, spark plug is good for 2 seasons for me, but I still like to remove it and inspect it. So to do that, we locate our spark plug. So front of the engine, cylinder head, you have your spark plug cable with boot. You're going to grab your boot, you're going to pull it off your spark plug. You're then going to take your ratchet, small extension, spark plug socket that has the rubber insert to protect the spark plug and to grip it. You're going to put it on to your spark plug, and we're going to loosen. And we're going to remove the spark plug from the cylinder head. Once it's loose, you can remove your ratchet and you could hand loosen it. And we're going to do this all the way until we remove the spark plug completely. Being careful not to hit the spark plug on anything and damage it. So let's remove this, and we're going to do a visual inspection. So our spark plug's removed. We're going to look at our spark plug. Now what I like to do, so I get some focus, there we go. This one still looks very good. Your next step you want to do is take a soft nylon brush, clean the spark plug, see electrode, get off all the soot. Take a feeler gauge, a gap gauge, and check the spark plug gap to make sure it's still in specification. Then if you see it's very failed, you change it. So on this particular mower, it's a Champion RC12YC, I believe. Yeah, RC12YC spark plug, but you want to check for your particular machine what spark plug it takes. If it's still good, clean it, check the gap, put it back in. Don't over tighten. Hand snug on a spark plug. You don't want to go over too tight or you could strip the hole. Put your lead back on. I also like to put a little dielectric grease on the porcelain part of the spark plug so the boot doesn't stick to it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now before putting the spark plug back in, what I like to do is fog the engine. So an oil fogger. So as you can see here, I have an oil fogger. It's the French side here for you English guys. Engine storage spray. It's basically just an oil lubricant that you're going to spray into the cylinder, so through the spark plug hole, now that the spark plug's removed, to lubricate the cylinder walls, the piston, and the rings. So the way you want to do this is you put your hose on, your can, you're going to stick it inside where your spark plug goes, and you're going to spray. You don't need too much. So now what you did is you sprayed that inside the cylinder. Then what you're going to want to do is put your key in the mower. Now it's not going to start because your spark plug's disconnected, but you want to move the piston back and forth to make sure you distribute that storage oil or storage spray over the cylinder wall and the piston. So you're going to crank the engine just a little bit. Give it a little crank, 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 just to move the piston back and forth with the spark plug out. That will distribute that oil all over. Now you could go ahead and reinstall your spark plug and put your spark plug cable back on. So I'm going to show you guys what I mean. I sprayed the storage oil inside the spark plug hole, and I'm going to start the engine, but just crank it very quick on the key. And that just moves the cylinder back and forth to get that oil all distributed inside and protecting all the metal components. Go ahead and fog the engine with the storage spray. The next step now on the maintenance of this machine, but very much similar to other garden tractors, is greasing all the components. So taking your grease gun, and you're going to grease anywhere there's a grease zert or fitting. So as you can see, here's an example of a grease zert. On this machine you have quite a few. You have one here on the steering spindle. You have one over here for the wheel. It's underneath there. You got some on the mower itself, on the linkage, and on the mower deck as well. For the spindles, you got a couple. But every machine is going to be a little different, so I'm not going to go over on this particular one because each machine is different. But look in your manual, it's going to show where they are. You're going to take your grease gun, you're going to give it a few pumps till you see a little bit of grease starting to ooze out, and then you're good to go. And you want to make sure you do that every season. Also, what I like to do is remove my mower deck. Every machine is going to be a little different, but they're pretty straightforward. Look in your manual. Just a couple linkages to remove and the cables, and they come right out. And I like to remove that and clean the complete underside, remove the blades, clean and sharpen or replace if needed. I have another video up showing how to sharpen the blades and how I remove the deck for repainting. So I removed all the spindles, so you could check out that video if you're interested. So that's pretty much the steps I take to storing the machine. The only other thing I do winter long is I put the battery on a trickle charger to keep the voltage up so it doesn't die over the winter. Also, my machine is stored in a heated garage over the winter, so it's a little babied maybe compared to some of your machines. But those are pretty much the steps I take. Like I said, they're not the Bible of what you need to do. It's what I've been doing over the years, and I've had success. Never had issues with my machines. They start up in the spring. So take what I say with a grain of salt, but through my experience, it works great. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Feel free to ask me anything. Remember to like and subscribe, as we always say, and keep looking out for new videos, as I'm going to have more and more. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for watching.